Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. This is Maria Liberati. What does food mean to you? Tell me in a recorded soundbite of 60 seconds or less, or a post of 50 words or less. Post on social media, hashtag it The Maria Liberati Show, and if your soundbite or quotes are selected to be part of an upcoming segment, I'll send an autographed copy of my book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, to you as special thanks. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook for some great foodie giveaways. Congratulations to Thea Nagel in Pennsylvania and Sophia Lloyd in Maryland for being part of my giveaway and winning some Italian flour from the Molino Dente company, a superior flour company from Italy. They're getting flour for all their holiday baking. So congratulations, guys. And stay tuned. We have some other great holiday giveaways coming up from the Pustine Company. A beautiful holiday foodie gift that you're going to love. So follow me on Instagram at Maria Liberati or Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati to find out about this next giveaway. Well, someone once said, I wish we could put up some of the Christmas spirit in jars and open a jar of it every month. Maybe it's time to open up that jar, find your tiny angels, and begin letting out some early Christmas spirit. The holiday season is upon us. And one pressing question is what to serve at the holiday table. Panettone or Pandoro. These are both sweet Italian dessert breads served traditionally for the holidays. If you're looking for something that says tradition, then it's the traditional Panettone Milanese coming from Milan, the king of the holiday season. Legend has it that it was first served at the banquet table of Ludovico il Moro at the Sforzi Castle in Milan on Christmas Day in 1495. It was called il pane confezionati con acini di uva, or in Latin, il panis quidem acinis uvae confectus. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Or in English, bread with raisin confections. On the other hand, Pandoro Veronese, that originated in Verona, has a legend that dates its origins to the year 1260. It was called Nadolin and was made for the holiday feast of the Della Scala nobility. A study was done. 7 out of 10 Italians were found to find both Pandoro and Panettone irreplaceable for their holiday table. And that same study found that 75.4% by Panettone and 75.3% by Pandoro. So this means that there's probably no choosing over one or the other. They're usually bought in pairs since both breads have their own distinctive taste and make an easy and festive dessert after a holiday meal or for a holiday coffee break. In Italy, it's becoming more difficult to locate freshly baked versions of the two. Even here in the US, the factory-produced versions are easier to find and more economical. But one thing is for sure, with Pandoro and Panettone at your holiday table, your meal will always feel like a special one, and whoever is at the table is sure to utter an ooh in anticipation at the moment that first slice is cut. So let me know, what's your favorite, Panettone or Pandoro? No matter what country you live in, you're sure to be able to find either one. And a holiday tradition at my family table has become this Panettone di Cioccolata, which is from my book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Holidays and Special Occasions, that was picked for the Gourmand World Cookbook Awards in Paris in 2010. You can get a copy at marialiberati.com or amazon.com or barnesandnoble.com. And here's my recipe for Panettone di Cioccolata, or chocolate panettone. It's made traditionally with the leftover panettone because Italians go crazy for panettone during the holidays and have it at their table, buy it for holiday gifts. So, with so much left over, there's usually enough to make some other special desserts. But you don't have to use leftover panettone for this. You can just purchase a panettone and make this a special dessert. This has become a holiday tradition at my family holiday table. You do need half of a large panettone for this recipe. 16 ounces of dark chocolate. My favorite is 70 to 90% cocoa, broken into small pieces or chopped. 4 chopped dried figs, a quarter cup of dried cherries, a quarter cup of raisins, 2 eggs, 2 cups of milk, a half a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, quarter cup of sugar, 1 fresh lemon rind grated, and powdered cocoa. Preheat the oven to 425 degrees, and you're just going to break or pull apart the panettone into small cubes. Place 1 layer of panettone cubes in an 8-inch round or square glass or ceramic baking dish. Cover with chopped chocolate pieces, chopped fig pieces, cherries, and raisins. Then you're going to cover that layer with the remaining panettone cubes. In a separate bowl, whisk the eggs, milk, vanilla, sugar, and lemon rind together. Pour the liquid over the panettone cubes. Gently push down on top. Be sure the liquid soaks into all the layers of the panettone. Let that sit for 10 minutes, then bake this in a preheated oven for 40 minutes or until firm and golden on top. When cool, dust with powdered cocoa and serve. This will definitely become one of your family's holiday favorites, and it's so easy to make. Paul, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here, and thanks, Maria.
And thank you so much for taking time out to share info on Few Spirits and also all the stuff you're going to talk about today. So, can you walk us through the process of making whiskey, kind of like start to finish?
Absolutely. So, I mean, whiskey is relatively simple. It's just a spirit. It's a distilled spirit from grain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you start off making whiskey, you take some sort of grain, whether it be barley or corn or wheat or rye. Um, those are by far the four most popular grains to use. Of course, other grains can be used, of course, too, but those are the primary ones. And so, when you start off, you take a grain, and you're first going to cook it to break it down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always try to think of that as kind of like making cream of wheat because it's really very, very similar. So you take it, you take the grain, you cook it down, which when you cook it, it breaks the grains down into starches.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it's cooked and cooled down, of course, you add the yeast. And I'm sorry, I skipped a step. First, you cook the grain, and then you added malted barley and or some sort of a malted grain, and that malting turns those starches into sugars,
Uh-huh.
which is typically done with malted barley, but you could use malted corn, malted rye, etc.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and now you've got kind of a sugar, water, and grains slurry. You add yeast, and what that yeast is going to do is convert all those nice, yummy sugars that you just made, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to convert those sugars into alcohol. And now you end up with what's called distiller's beer or wash, which is typically going to be somewhere between 5 and 15% alcohol by volume. And then you're going to distill it. And when you distill, you're basically just removing the alcohol from that liquid. And then with the
Oh,
distillery, that the alcohol is of course what you want. So you kind of keep and collect that, and that's kind of distillation in a nutshell. Cook it,
yes. Yes.
turn it into sugar, ferment it, and then remove the alcohol.
Yes, yes. Yes. Wow, that's really, really interesting. So, and how long do you age the whiskey?
Whiskeys get aged until it's either until it's ready for the marketing or it's ready for the palate. So you take the whiskey and you put it into wooden barrels. Like once it's distilled, you take that new make and you put it into oak barrels where it's going to pick up some of the flavor from the wood.
Uh-huh.
It'll get oxidized, which will help. And then, like you said, you have to age it where you leave it in those barrels for a period of time.
So I was going to also ask you, do you infuse your whiskey with anything? Is there anything you infuse it with? Do you have any versions of the whiskey that's infused with different things?
So we don't do a lot of infusions per se, although we've released two kind of innovative products over the last year or so. One of them is what we call the Few Cold Cut Bourbon, and the
Uh-huh.
other one is called the Few Immortal Rye.
Uh-huh.
And so with that, it's not really an infusion per se, but usually when whiskey comes out of the barrel, you add water to bring it down to the bottle strength
Uh-huh.
because it's it sits in barrel stronger than most people want to drink it. So you
Uh-huh.
add water to bring it down. For the Few Cold Cut, we add cold brew coffee instead of water.
Huh.
And for the Few Immortal, we use a black oolong tea
Oh,
called
wow.
Eight Immortals. And so they're not really infusions per se, but that's certainly kind of along the line of the question.
Yes.
Um,
And that's really unique. Isn't that's a unique thing, right? I've never not really heard of that.
yeah, I'm not aware of anybody else doing that, at least the
Very,
way we do it.
yeah. Wow, that is
Uh,
really interesting.
yeah, it's really delicious. Actually, the
Uh-huh.
Few Cold Cut got named world's best flavored whiskey
Uh-huh.
just right when lockdown hit. So
Ah,
we haven't been able to really celebrate that one so much, but we've had some fun with
yeah.
it. We need to talk about it, but
Yes,
maybe
you
not.
could talk about it, probably celebrate it online
Yeah,
somehow. But
that's the
that
best party though.
yes, and that's definitely something you want to celebrate and brag about, definitely.
Yeah.
So, I get asked this all the time, like about, things like wine and olive oil. People want to know how to choose the best wine or olive oil. How do you choose the best? So, how
Yeah.
do you, anything that people should look for when choosing the best whiskey?
Well, I mean, I think the word best itself is always a challenge because I think different whiskeys are good for different times. Just like
Uh-huh.
I don't think there's a best olive oil because some olive oils are best for putting on bread, some olive oils are
Oh,
best for
yeah.
baking, some are going to be better for cooking,
Yes,
some are
yes,
better
yes.
for this. I mean,
Well,
so the concept of best is always a tough one for a producer. But
yes,
when I'm looking for whiskey, what I'm kind of tend to be looking for is depth of flavor.
yes.
So, is it, do I want a sweeter whiskey? Do I want a spicier whiskey? Do I want a smokier whiskey?
Mhm.
I think there's room for all of those. And there's different times that I want sweeter or spicier or smokier or fruitier or, fill in the blank, whatever you're in the mood for.
Uh-huh.
So you just kind of pick those. And then you want to start looking for, you know, obviously you're looking for quality, which is going to be
Right.
depth of flavor. How rich is it? How much alcohol burn is there? Do you want it to be a little bit higher in alcohol, or do you
Hmm.
want it to be a little bit lower in alcohol?
Right.
Um, and again, there's no right or wrong answer to any of these questions, but it is different. And so those are some things you'd be looking for. You certainly don't want to have, any defects in your whiskey, but that's not very common.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to find a lot of whiskey with a lot of defects on the market.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I think those are things to look for.
To look
I
for.
always enjoy looking at color. I mean,
Uh-huh.
color is a really poor judge of quality of whiskey,
Huh.
but so much of your enjoyment of whiskey can be visual and not just in your mouth that,
Mhm.
color does matter.
Uh-huh. Is there
And so
anything to like an odor? Because I know like sometimes with olive oil, there's specific odors too. It's not just the taste, but it's the odor, anything with a specific odor, like specific scents that's coming from,
a lot of the odors and the nose on your whiskey is going to vary based on whether it's bourbon or rye or scotch.
Oh,
So
uh-huh.
it can be really tough to say, hey, don't watch out for this kind of smell because
Right,
it's probably
right.
not going to be a good one.
Yes,
Certainly watch
yes.
out for sulfur. If there's a
Uh,
sulfur smell to it,
uh-huh.
that's not going to be good, and you're going to want to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that said, an iodine smell can be really fantastic if you like peated scotches.
Uh-huh.
So there's going to be some overlap on that.
Wow.
Certainly if you're finding any sort of a butter popcorn smell, you'll
Mm-hmm.
probably want to avoid that.
Huh.
Oftentimes bananas can
Mm-hmm.
be a challenge, but sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, I mean, I think the key is try it.
Yes.
And that's, to me, that's the joy of whiskey, is that different people will like different ones. And if you get if you load up five good friends, they're all whiskey fans,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have 10 different opinions about which whiskey's the best.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no right or wrong answer. There may be right or wrong answers for you as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and me, Maria. Maria and Paul are going to have different favorite whiskeys. Uh,
Yes.
and that's a good thing. That's not a sign that one of us is better or worse than the other one.
Yes.
That's the joy. It's like music or art.
That's
My
true.
favorite band is going to be different than your favorite band, and my favorite
Exactly.
painter is going to be different than your favorite painter.
Yes.
Um, so I think that's kind of key. And I think a lot of people get wound up on, what's the best? What's the best?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and best doesn't really exist.
That's probably true. I think the main thing is, and I might not have phrased it either, but to make sure that you have a really good, experience so that it's a quality product. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what I guess, I'm always looking for. Because you're right. There's really and really, if you're right, if it's what you like, then that's really the best for you. But I always like people to know how to get that a true experience of a quality product. But I mean, your
Sure.
product is more of a craft beverage, so I'm sure it's a quality product
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean,
Right then and there, it's craft, craft product. So,
when
it's
someone's
it's a different.
yeah, if you're just starting to get into whiskey, I always recommend first,
Mm-hmm.
take a sip of it neat. Second, take a sip of it on the rocks,
Uh-huh.
and then try it. Try a couple of different cocktails that you like
Oh,
with that whiskey. So try, if
that's a
you're
good idea.
into whiskey and Coke, try it with some Coke.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into Manhattans, try it in a Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
And that's the other thing that makes whiskey really cool, is that a whiskey that maybe you don't like as much neat,
Uh-huh.
maybe you'll like a lot better on the rocks. Or this whiskey that you like in Manhattan, maybe you don't like it on the rocks, but you do like it neat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's whiskey is really fun and something you can really play around with, that other beverages, you don't really do that. Like, you don't mix different beers together to see if you like that beer better that way, or you don't mix wine. Uh,
Right.
but you can play with whiskey and you can drink it so many different ways, none of which are the correct way and none of which are the wrong way. Uh,
Exactly.
it's part of the joy, and what makes whiskey such an enjoyable beverage to drink, is just the variety of ways that you can drink it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a guy who works in the whiskey business, I mean,
Yes.
frequently I drink my whiskey neat. Sometimes I drink it on the ice. Sometimes I drink cocktails. There's just, there's no right or wrong answer, and I think that's the joy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So one of your whiskeys was named Craft Whiskey of the Year, is that correct?
Yeah, a couple years
So
ago,
can you tell us
yeah,
about that whiskey?
sure. That's our Few Spirits Rye whiskey.
Uh-huh.
It's our number two seller, and it's really the kind of product that got us on the map,
Uh-huh.
because it's very different than other rye whiskeys, and it's really helped to get us a lot of attention, and it brings people from the whiskey as well as the beer and wine worlds into the Few Spirits family.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the Few Spirits Rye whiskey, you really get this nice spice, but you also get some really nice fruit
Mm-hmm.
flavors. So rye whiskey as a whole is typically going to be a little bit spicier than other whiskeys. Just think about, say, for example, rye bread versus cornbread.
Yeah.
Whereas rye whiskey and bourbon is going to be a similar comparison to rye bread and cornbread.
Right.
Both are good, but your
Yes.
rye bread can be a little bit spicier than the cornbread, which is going to be a little bit sweeter.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so for a Few Spirits Rye whiskey, we're finding a lot of people who are coming into it and finding a really nice balance of those spice and sweet flavors, as well as the Few Spirits Rye whiskey is well known for having a pretty good amount of kind of more fruity flavors,
Mm-hmm.
plums and pears, and the kind of stone fruit that you might get from a French red wine.
Mm-hmm. So there's this, my production intern told me that you have a Whiskeys of the World project. What's that about?
We work with a whole bunch of different whiskeys around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been a part of a lot of whiskey of the world projects. We're ranging from collections of various people that are collecting whiskeys from all over the world, to us working with our friends who make whiskey from all over the world as well.
Uh-huh.
The whiskey making world tends to be a little bit small and a little bit tight, and we all tend to know each other. And
Uh-huh.
so, we get to, I'm really lucky because we get a chance to work with our friends from all over the world.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Obviously locally here in Chicago, but we've worked with friends from Finland and California and Washington and Florida,
Uh-huh.
all 50 states and Canada and France and Italy. And, I was just a speaker at a conference in Italy,
Uh-huh.
virtually, of course,
Virtual.
because it was just in October.
Oh, wow.
Um, but I think being part of this whiskey community around the world is really fantastic, because people who make whiskey tend to be pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds like it. And I'm sure you get to share ideas and all kinds of things, which is really neat because I guess that opens up so many things when you can,
Yep,
share that around the world.
absolutely, and of course we get to share each other's whiskey, which
Yes,
doesn't suck either.
which is a pretty good thing also. Yes. So you're based in, I didn't know this, but again, my production intern told me you're based in Evanston, Illinois, which I
Hmm.
understand is the birthplace of Prohibition.
Yep.
So why did you choose that location? Is it just a location you are at?
Well, I live here.
Oh, there you go.
And so when I decided to start a distillery, it just ended up being that the natural place is where I live.
Yes,
I was the
yes.
vice president of this PTA at my kid's school, and I
Uh-huh.
coach AYSO soccer, and I was on the
Uh-huh.
board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so it just kind of made sense to put a distillery right where I live. Of
Exactly.
course, the challenge was that it was very illegal to do that.
Hmm.
And so I got to work with the city government to change all the laws.
Oh,
And at the end result was I'm the guy that killed Prohibition dead where it was born. Uh,
wow.
but we got to have I get to make whiskey where I live,
That's,
and
yep, and
it's
nothing
wonderful.
better than that. Yep, nothing better than that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was going to say
Yeah.
that's great. So in addition to all your whiskey experience, you also make other spirits, I understand. How does the
Mhm.
distilling process vary from spirit to spirit? Is it that much different?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's going to be similar, and some of it's going to be a little bit different. And we do, we are at least somewhat known for our gins as well. I actually got named an icon of the entire gin industry a couple of years ago, which is kind of cool.
Wow,
Um,
yeah.
but gin starts off the same way. You take your grains, mash it, you ferment it, you distill it. But once it's distilled, you're going to take that spirit, that liquor,
Uh-huh.
and you're going to redistill it with some botanicals to add
Uh,
that kind of gin flavor. So
uh-huh.
you'll add in, juniper berries and coriander, uh, citrus, whatever the recipe is for your gin.
Right.
You take that and you're gonna, soak those flavors actually into the spirit when you're redistilling it, and that
Mhm.
picks up those flavors. So you're drinking gin, you're drinking the base spirit, of course, but you're
Oh,
also drinking the spirit that's been flavored with all these extra flavors that
yes.
the distiller has added in. So
Yes.
we use juniper,
Uh-huh.
we use citrus peels, we use coriander, we use tea leaves, we use hops, vanilla beans. We use flavors from all over the world,
Hmm.
and we tie them all together into a gin product,
Wow.
and it's delicious stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like it. One of the things I want to ask you, so I know in my experience, because I studied the culinary arts in Italy and I've been to loads of vineyards there, and a lot of the vineyards tend to reuse the barrels that are used for aging different types of liquors like
Mhm.
whiskey or, so do you do anything with the barrels that you use for aging your spirits or?
So bourbon and rye, which is most of what we make, require brand new barrels. So
Uh-huh.
we mostly sell our barrels to other people like vineyards and
There you
breweries.
go.
But we do a decent amount of what's called finishing, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
take barrels that previously held something else and use that to finish our products,
Uh-huh.
whether it's tequila or wine or brandy, maple syrup,
Hmm.
hot sauce.
Wow.
Anything that you've stored in that barrel previously is going to have an effect on the flavor, and
Right.
so it's really fun to have a whiskey finished in a blank barrel. It's funny
Yeah.
you talk about Italy because that's one of the big finishes we do.
Uh-huh.
There's a company called Italy, which I'm sure you've heard of,
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
and so we work with them every year, and we get some barrels. We get wine barrels from various wineries in Italy, and then
Uh-huh.
we finish our whiskey in it, and then it's available for sale at Italy.
Wow, that
Um,
is really cool. So you do kind of the opposite. So you use the wine barrels for the
mhm.
spirits, which is pretty interesting. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I had not heard of that. Yeah, that's really cool. So where, if somebody's interested in buying your spirits now, can they buy online? How does that work? Because I know with anything alcoholic, there's all kinds of different, or can they buy it at the different stores around the country? How can they find the products?
Yeah, I mean, online you can find us at reservebar.com or caskers.com.
Mm-hmm.
But we're sold across 50 states, 36 countries on 5 continents. So wherever you are, you can probably find our stuff, and you can look at us at fewspirits.com to
Mm-hmm.
find retailers near you.
Oh,
If you
that's
can't
great.
find one near you, you can order it to be shipped right to your home, like I said, from Reserve Bar or Caskers. Or if
Yes.
you're in Europe, you can use La Maison du Whiskey or Master of Malt. Or if you're in Italy, there's different places you can use, or Spain or Germany. You can
Yes.
use Crane House. We're available all over the world, and we try to make it easy as we can to buy our stuff.
Oh, yes. Yeah. My listening audience is actually all over the world. So that's good that you announced all those different sources, places to be able to buy your product. So, Paul, I always ask all my guests at the end of the interview, what does food mean to you? But I'm guessing maybe I should ask you, what does whiskey mean to you?
I mean, whiskey is a social lubricant that, I think that's why I love whiskey so much
Uh-huh.
is, whiskey and spirits are very much what you drink when you're together with friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring people together. And
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, that's the magic of whiskey. And I also think it's kind of the magic of few as well is, we try to make whiskey the same way it gets consumed with
Mm-hmm.
friends.
Yes.
And, we all work together, and we're all, we're part of a huge team. And I think that's, maybe it's a little bit silly, but I think it matters that, whiskey is something that brings friends and family together.
Yes.
I could tell you all the stories about, going out and meeting people, and then it's always the woman in the pair. It's never the man because he's always too embarrassed. But, usually the woman comes up to me and she's already been well served.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, a couple years ago, we spent a night with your bottle, and 9 months later, we had a baby. And I think that's just magic to be a part of creating that much love.
Uh-huh.
What kind of business do you get to be in where your products create love? And
Oh,
that's
yes, exactly.
that's magic.
That is that's really important, and I think that definitely says what whiskey means to you. So is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything coming up in the near future um before we end the interview? Anything else
I mean,
coming up?
yeah, we're always working on new stuff, but certainly
Uh,
right now we're primarily talking about that immortal rye, which is that rye whiskey cut down to proof with the black oolong tea. That's our new release. It just came out just about 8 weeks ago, and we're loving it.
that sounds really interesting, very unique. Great. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for
Thanks,
taking
Marie.
the time out, and I'm sure we'll see you again. I'll let you know when we're going to do that other interview.
Sounds
And
great.
thanks again. Have a good
Thanks,
one. Have
Marie.
a good holiday. Thanks for joining us and listening to the Maria Liberati Show. If you make my chocolate panettone, take a picture, share with us on social media, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show. We'll be gathering photos to put on my new and updated website shortly. Thanks to my producer, Britton Roselle, my special guest, Paul Letko of Few Spirits, and my production intern, Alexandra Krenz, for this week's show. And you can get a copy of The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Holidays, and Special Occasions at marialiberati.com or amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, almost anywhere that you can purchase books online. You can find the Gourmand World Award-winning book for more holiday recipes. You can follow me on Twitter at Maria Liberati with a capital M, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Instagram at Maria Liberati. And don't forget, we are having more giveaways, more foodie giveaways on my Instagram, Facebook, and this very podcast account. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook to find out how to be part of the giveaways and how to win some of the upcoming prizes that we're giving away. We'll be giving away some copies of my books as well. This is Maria Liberati. Until next time, peace, love, and pasta.